I don't know where to start. It all seems like a blur, a nightmare. I'm from Capernaum. That's on the northwest coast of the Sea of Galilee, about 20 miles northeast of Nazareth. I'm a centurion, which means I have 100 men in my company. Not bad, but not that impressive by Roman standards. They were high in those days. We had to know the meaning of loyalty to the empire, of duty. Nothing less was tolerated. We were the best. And I guess that's how I met him. You see, in those days when we conquered a territory, we took the able-bodied people and made them into servants. That's not to say that they were uneducated or mistreated necessarily. In fact, some of the most influential writers and artists and even doctors of our time were servants, which was good because we were so busy conquering the world, we didn't have time for those kinds of things. Anyway, some people loved their servants so much that they set them free and adopted them and gave them an inheritance. And that's how I felt about mine. He was more than just a servant. He was a part of my family. And when he was paralyzed, it hurt me more than I could stand to see him suffering, the depression, the tear-swollen eyes. I mean, I'm not used to feeling so helpless. I'm in control. Whenever I say jump, 100 guys jump, but there wasn't anything I could do for him. And then to make matters worse, or so it seemed, I had to work that weekend. You see, the word came down that a huge crowd was coming into town from the Horns of Hattin, which is a little mountain range outside of town. Seems like there was some sort of a religious retreat up there or something. And anyway, there was this bunch of them coming, and we had to be on duty to control traffic and watch for trouble. Now, I like the Jews. Don't get me wrong. Some of the nicest people I've ever met are Jews. I even helped build the synagogue there in town. But when they get fired up over religion, sometimes it can get out of hand. So we had to be on duty. But that day, as one passerby after another came past my post, I couldn't help but realize that they were more excited than usual. The snatches of the conversation showed me that this was not like anything that I've ever heard at the days when they came out of a synagogue meeting. This teacher must have been really something. One after another, they would say things like, loving your enemies, and we should seek first the kingdom, and forgive people who've done us wrong, and we should lay up our treasures in heaven, which that one caught my attention because if somebody's laying up treasure somewhere, you can bet I want to know where it is. But the thing that really was the most important was I heard about how a leper had been healed of his leprosy by the mere command of this Jesus. I don't know what happened really that day. It's sort of like a dream now. But I began to search for him. I began to look for him in the crowd, and I had to find him. I had to find this Jesus because I knew if anybody could help my friend, he could. And he did. He didn't even have to come into my home. Not that I didn't want him to. I just know that Jews are not supposed to go into homes of Gentiles. So I just said, speak the word. And he did. And when I got home, he was healed. Well, it must have been a couple years that passed. And over that time, I began to have the initial gratitude that I felt for him kind of melt away. Skeptics had told me that my friend recovered because of natural causes. He was going to get better anyway. This was all a pure coincidence that had nothing to do with the teacher. And then I got transferred to Jerusalem. Now, that's not unusual. The Romans moved us around a lot. They never wanted us to become attached to any certain area. We always had to have our first loyalty to the emperor. But it turns out that there was some kind of a ruckus going on down there about a would-be Messiah, and the Jews were all upset, and we needed to go help Governor Pilate keep order. When I got there, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the day of the trial, and it was him, the teacher. It seems that the Jews were wanting to nail him for impersonating the Son of God. And Pilate said, I can't find anything dangerous or worthy of the death penalty in this man. But they kept insisting. So he finally said, well, I will put it to a public vote. I will release for you one prisoner, either Jesus the teacher or Barabbas, a murderer who fought for the violent overthrow of Rome. And the religious leaders convinced the people to call for the killing of Jesus, an innocent man. What kind of religion does that? But then I was in the crowd that day when they yelled Barabbas, and I said nothing. I was there when they said, "Crucify Jesus," and I was too afraid to do anything. The governor ordered us to whip him with a cat of nine tails. That's a whip that has pieces of broken glass and broken metal embedded in it. 39 times I held my breath. 39 crimson lines crisscrossed his bare back and then blended into a mass of sweat and blood. And I remembered the words of the scribe in Capernaum on some distant Sabbath day when I heard him quote from Isaiah, "He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole. And with his stripes," those crimson stripes, "we are healed." Healed. This man healed my servant, my friend. And I watched as they spat upon him and mocked him and cut him and nailed him to a tree. I was too afraid to stand up to him or stand up for him. I pretended I didn't know him. I joined in their taunts. I cast lots for his garments. I helped crucify him. After all, I was under orders. To disobey would have been death. It was my job. What would you have done? But he said nothing. Oh, I know he recognized me. But he didn't say, "Hey, you, don't you remember me? You owe me one." He didn't beg me to help him. But I will never forget those eyes. The hurt of 1,000,000 lifetimes was in those eyes. But yet he prayed, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." And then he looked at me. And I knew that somehow he meant me too. Truly, this man was the Son of God. And I can't quite shake this feeling that it's somehow my fault, that he died because of me. But I'm not going to take this rap alone, because anytime you are afraid to stand up for him, anytime you who know him won't live for him, won't speak for him, then he dies because of you too. You crucify him all over again. You see, Jesus died because of you too. After a few days, the streets were filled with rumors. Jesus' body had disappeared. His disciples, it was said, had seen him alive. The Roman high command instructed us to tell everyone that his disciples had overcome the guards and stolen the body so they could make these outlandish claims. But I know those guys who were on duty, and I know that it was the death penalty if they didn't do their job, and no puny bunch of fishermen and tax collectors were going to get by them. No, I know somehow he's alive. And I've just got to tell somebody. Truly he was, no, truly he is the Son of God. And knowing that, I can never be the same again. Can you?